Hello, it's Earl3 here, back with another video. Today we're going to be going over the Mesa biome, and in particular a Wild Western style build. And in this here Mesa biome we're going to be building a frontier town by the name of Las Tierras Salvajes. In the video we're going to be going over the basics of how you can create your own town just like it in survival mode or creative mode, and go over a few tricks and tips that you can use, just to make life a little bit easier for you. I've linked important timestamps in the description of the video so you can jump ahead or behind to whatever parts of the video are relevant to you, so if you only want the landscaping, that's there, or if you only want to know how to build the buildings, that's there too. This will also be the last video I upload in a little while, so make sure if you like the content to like, subscribe and join the Discord, as it helps the channel grow and lets you keep up to date with whatever's happening. Because, and now comes the part where I guilt trip my subscribers about YouTube statistics and subscriber ratios, a fair portion of you aren't yet subscribed, which is totally fine, but if you want to keep up to date, remember to hit that button. And with all that safely out the way, let's jump into the video. First, let's go over prep and terraformation. Now, in order to do things quickly, you can use command blocks in creative mode. And in deserts you might find this command useful. Execute as @A, @S, run, fill, select an area of 10 blocks around you, air, replace, dead bush. And if you're not in the know about command block knowledge, basically all this does is when you're flying around, replaces dead bushes around the scenery with air, as long as you're within about 10 blocks of it. If you're working in other biomes, you can replace the dead bush in that command with grass or any other block that you find that you need to remove. And of course the survival mode alternative to that is a water bucket, your good old trusty water bucket. Next stage after you've cleared out that bit of terrain is to make the terrain itself look a little more shapely. Start off by removing any blemishes like ponds or caves or anything like that, and then smooth out the lines of the terrain over a larger scale. In this clip that I'm rolling here you can see that I'm just making the lakes a little bit smoother on the shores, and then lining up the rest of the land to fit it in nice smooth curves. If you're looking for more in-depth detail about terraformation, please check out my video on that, because that will help you out a little bit. But to summarise in those little words as possible, layer by layer and go wider towards the base. Next up we're going to have a look at what kind of paths we want in the build. Now I have chosen here to use paths before the buildings. This I find helps, but you can do it in the opposite way around. The build style being a really stereotypical frontier town, I've decided that what I'm going to have is one big central street running down the centre of the town, and then have more curved and less tended to roads going away from the town. For the pathing material, I've chosen to use sand, coarse dirt, and a couple of wood planks to give it a little bit of spice. But again, that material choice is totally up to you, and if you feel something fits better, it's up to you to use it. Next up, start planning down your buildings. Here I'm using blue concrete, green concrete, and pink concrete because those stand out against the red desert sand. In a frontier town setting, what you'll want to do is you'll want to make your buildings quite a bit bigger than you would if you were building in, say, a medieval setting, so do keep that in mind when you're planning and make sure you have enough space. Speaking of buildings, you'll want to start off with the most iconic one you can imagine, and that here is going to be the saloon. We'll start off by planning out a porch or sheltered area and making it a half slab above the ground like this. Next up, use wooden materials to form the inside wall and start making that shelter out of half slabs and campfire blocks that have been extinguished. On the second floor, you can turn this saloon into a multi-purpose thing. In the centre, you want to have a small clock tower and maybe some eccentric materials like white concrete or diorite to flavour it up a little bit. And extend that clock tower up out the centre of the build and into a point. One that will be able to be seen from the rest of the town, so make sure to keep in mind your sightlines when you're planning out the rest of the building. And of course the white concrete and the diorite will help with that sightline a lot. Next up, you can start thinking about shops and other kind of buildings that are going to be along the main street of the build. This being a frontier town, your material choice is going to be very heavily wooden based, so make sure to consider all types of wood, jungle and acacia included, in your builds. You also might want to consider other kinds of material groupings like granite and red terracotta, as I just did there. As for other structures in your build, make sure you have something like a water tower, as water might be scarce in this desert environment, so if you want it to look authentic, make sure to have something like that just littered around the build. Going back to your normal structures, what you might want to play around with is building shape. Now, some of your buildings might be quite flat, some might be quite jagged, triangular, or all sorts of shapes, but you want to make them all interesting to look at in their own unique way. Since building in a frontier town style will kind of limit your building materials in a way, what you want to do is you want to make that limited building material, and you want to make sure that it's not the limiting factor of how good your build is. Make it interesting to look at by playing around with the shape of your build and making sure each one is unique in its own way. Whether that means playing around with controversial build choices like diorite, or just granite and red terracotta, the choice is entirely up to you, but make sure each one is interesting to look at in its own way. Next up, let's have a look at a centerpiece for your town. Now, each town will need something that goes in the center or will catch the eyes of anyone looking in. And in the case of a western frontier town, a church is a pretty good idea for what to build. Make sure you start off with a small front bit, a wider body, and a nice steep spire up the center. Arched windows carved out of the wooden walls are also optional, but I felt like they added a lot to the build. Surrounding your town, you're gonna want a couple of decorations so that the buildings aren't the only thing new people are looking at. Here to the north of the town, I've decided that something is gonna be some farms, some cattle farms. So where I plotted out the pink concrete earlier, I decided I'd put fences and decorate those fences in with some sandstone and red sandstone blocks and slabs so that it's survival friendly, mobs can't get out, and it also looks quite nice to, well, visually. So make sure you finish up with that sandstone, red sandstone, and then you can have a look at what we're doing overall. With the paths we made earlier, we might want to extend those out as though there's some people that have treaded off the beaten track and dragged that sand from the path out with them. It helps to give some texture to the surroundings and also helps to give an idea that this town is lived in. And as you can see happening here already, another thing we can do to make the town feel lived in is to make a railway out of anvils and wooden slabs. Now, you might need an iron farm if you're going to do that in survival mode, but it does look really nice, and I think the end result is worth it. Speaking rather morbidly of end results, maybe your town needs something a little more dire as a decoration, in which case, guillotines will do. Here I've built 3 of them just outside the church in a horrific twist of fate. And as though to rub insult to injury, we're just gonna build a graveyard right on the other side. After all, you can't really include a guillotine in a build without having a graveyard and a spooky atmosphere next to it, can you? For your headstones, you're going to want some stone materials like cobblestone, some stone bricks, and some andesite, and it all just makes it look a little bit nicer. Fences and other wooden structures can go as a little bit of a breakup for that grey feeling we've got, but otherwise, those are the materials you're going to want to stick to for the headstones and the graves. Flowers are optional. Outside the town limits, consider making some stones and some rocky outcrops like this. Now here I'm using red sandstone and regular sandstone just as an example, but you can use any sort of stone that you feel fits, of course. And dotted around those rocky outcrops, what you might like to do is build some basic custom trees. Now, the custom trees we're going to be building here are all going to be dried up and dead ones, unfortunately, as it is a desert. But that does mean that you won't be needing to grind for leaves in survival mode, so it does rather take a lot of work off of your hands. Place your logs up vertically like you would when making an oak, and just leave out the leaves. It's as simple as that. And for the last finishing touches of the build, we're going to be having a look at the internals. Now we've got the church on screen and we can see already that we've already filled out the windows with stained glass. Now you can use that if you want, or you can just use regular glass. The choice is completely up to you. However, I do recommend putting in some pews here and decorating those with birch on the back and spruce fences and trapdoors at the sides, so that it makes little gates that you can go in and out. Lighting those up with lanterns that hang down from the ceiling, and it looks very nice. Switching from the religious influence of the church into a more shopkeepy environment, here we're going to be building up the struts and the internals of a shop. Inside to display the cases, you might want shelves, or you might want barrels, or any other combination of materials that go on shelves usually, but here I've just chosen shelves as that makes the atmosphere just a little bit more believable in a Western style build. Finish that off with some spruce trapdoors along the desk, and we have a pretty nice shop. And of course, who could forget the iconic saloon we had in earlier? On the right hand side of the screen you can see us building that up just now. In one of the corners or along one of the walls you might want to have a bunch of barrels with tripwire hooks on them to make it look like taps. Place down half slabs with spruce trapdoors or dark oak trapdoors around them to make it look like bar stools, and decorate your countertops with turtle eggs or flower pots to make it look like a mug, or a glass, or a potion bottle, or whatever you'd like to be sitting there. Moving on to a very slightly less morbid setting than guillotines, we're going to have a look at a jail cell. Now, in our best efforts to fit the theme of the build, we're going to make these jail cells quite cramped, quite small, compact, that kind of thing. And we're only going to give the room some basic decorations, like this little chair for the guards to sit in, and a lamp to keep the mobs out. But otherwise you can see what kind of decorations are here, and what kind of things are in the building. And with everything now fine and done, let's take a step back and see what we've done today. Thank you very much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, remember to consider leaving a like, subscribing, or if you'd like, join the Discord, as it does help the channel grow and you'll be up to date with everything that's happening. In the meantime, I will be seeing you next time. Goodbye.